Alright, so I recently got Disney Plus, and as I was scrolling through all the age-appropriate content on there, I stopped on The Mandalorian to watch. Now, I know it's been out for like ages now, but I pushed off watching it. Why? Because of this, and this. I've been so hurt by these over-Disneyed, cash-grab, audience-panning excuses for movies that I didn't want my delicate, pumping pecs to get hurt again. So reluctantly, I watched it, and put simply, fucking loved it. Then it got me thinking, why did I hate the Star Wars Shitty trilogy, or the Star Shit trilogy, if you will, so much, but I liked The Mandalorian? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Star Shit trilogy got the one thing wrong that The Mandalorian got so right, and that is nostalgia. Nailed it. The best way I can explain why nostalgia is important is in this one clip from Mad Men in which Don Draper tries to explain the importance of nostalgia to the execs at Kodak. So, let's watch.
He told me the most important idea in advertising is new. Creates an itch. But he also talked about a deeper bond with the product. Nostalgia. It's delicate, but potent.
In Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
Both of these installments to a live-action Star Wars reboot are an attempt at nostalgia. Because as Star Wars fans, let's face it, that's what we truly want. It brings the money. Granted, I wasn't born during the original trilogy during the 70s and 80s. But when I watch those original movies, I feel like I'm being transported to a whole new world. Full of lightsaber fights, appropriate use of the Force, and probably my favorite, weird creatures in weird places. I can go on forever. This is the kind of stuff that made Star Wars mind-blowing. So, how did the Star Wars trilogy execute nostalgia so wrong, where The Mandalorian did it so right? Oh, so obviously before I start, this is a spoiler disclaimer as well. So when the original trilogy came out, everyone was stoked at how much potential was in the Star Wars history and the lore. What is the Force? Who is the Jedi? Why are the Jedi? What about the Sith? I myself have been guilty of going down endless YouTube rabbit holes, reading and listening about this kind of stuff. And that's time well wasted, mind you. Well, in The Mandalorian, they introduced us into the bounty hunter Mandalorian way of life, which we knew pretty little about. Through the first season of the show, we get snippets and snippets of the Mandalore lore. And so we're intrigued. When we learn that the Mandalorian is not a religion, is not a race, but it's a creed, man, that's fucking awesome. The feeling of intrigue that I had for the Jedi originally, now I have for the Mandalorians. In the start of the Star Wars trilogy, the closest thing we get to any sort of lore is probably the Knights of Ren, but they're hardly even used in the movies. They come in, full combat gear, walk around, do jack shit, and then they get single-handedly owned by Kylo Ren. Come on, that's all we get? I have zero interest in figuring out more or learning more about the Knights of Ren. Speaking of the lore, by far the best thing about Star Wars was the world building. No other movie franchise did it better. The sense of escape from reality was what Roger Ebert called an out-of-body experience when he first reviewed the movie. Now in The Mandalorian, we're taking from world to world as we go along the Mandalorian's adventure. And as a result, the world building serves the story. Half the season, they're in Tatooine. I mean, it's where Star Wars all started. Nostalgia at its finest. In the Star Shitology, however, we go from world to world to world because the plot demands it. The random places, they look cool, but they're kind of gimmicky. The new movies invent so many new worlds that we're kind of confused where they are. In the original trilogy, we were captivated by all the creatures that the GOAT thought up and brought to life on the screen. We loved Chewbacca, the Tauntauns, Jabba the Hutt. I am, of course, excluding this guy, because fuck that guy. In the Star Shitology, we're introduced to characters like Babu Frick, what the frick? And whatever the hell these annoying things are. I don't feel anything for these creatures at all. Now in The Mandalorian, however, we're introduced to the one creature that has taken 2019 and 2020 by storm. Oh baby, fucking Yoda. But it's so freaking cute and it's memeable. In addition, we also get introduced to these rhino-looking things called mudhorns. And by the end of the season, I frankly wanted to own one. Speaking of Baby Yoda, the Force was another aspect of the original trilogy that made it so interesting. It was this enigmatic, spiritual form of energy that we as an audience know so little about. The Force was mysterious and I'm all for that. In The Mandalorian, we barely even see the Force. In fact, I don't think they mention the Force at all through the entire first season. When Baby Yoda uses it, it's mind-blowing. Not only is the Force important to the plot, but it also motivates the characters. We want the characters to use the Force, and so when they do, the payoff is... Now in the Star Shitology, the Force is basically reduced to a superpower. You can do telekinesis, healing, Force fields, Force bond, Force projections, Force stopping lasers. Rey not only masters the Force in like one movie, but anyone with the Force is just way too OP. One of the landmark achievements of the original Star Wars trilogy was its ability to create robots and droids and merchandise the hell out of these things. The droids were important to the movie, but they were also key characters in the actual story. When they did stuff, we rooted for them. In The Mandalorian, weirdly enough, IG-11 is my favorite character. Yes, a droid had a character arc. This bounty droid turned nurse droid was probably the best droid character since these things from The Phantom Menace. In the sequel trilogy, the droids that we get are, okay, I admit BB-8 is pretty cool, but we get Dio, who is just about as interesting as this female Iron Man. In the original Star Wars trilogy, the introduction of this wise old mentor named Yoda as this cheeky, contemplative character with immeasurable power was intriguing as a character. What was especially memorable was the way that he talked. The way that he talks is iconic now. The Mandalorian we're introduced to Quill, who's a super nice, freed slave character in Tatooine who basically helps the main characters. His level of wisdom brings us back to the old days. He even has his own catchphrase, which is, frankly, been useful in my life as well. In the Star Shitology, we basically get introduced to Maz Kanata, which is basically the epitome of a wasted character. So, at the end of the day, the Star Wars sequel trilogy makes a very poor attempt at executing nostalgia. The Mandalorian, however, introduces new ideas, new concepts, and new characters in a coherent way that invokes a feeling of nostalgia. We felt like we were returning to a galaxy far, far away. All right, so that was my take on The Mandalorian versus the new Star Wars sequel trilogy. Let me know what you think, comment below, and let me know if you disagree. But just remember, if you disagree, you're wrong. All right, till next time, peace.